in one given day, like how many things would you be taking at that point in time? Like, you
I
got the
mean,
gambling
I would
addiction and
gambling every day.
yeah.
Every day was gambling because it would either be a poker game or there'd be sports on. There's sports every single day.
Mm.
So it was every day. And I was a bookie, so people were calling bets into me every day. Weed, marijuana every day. Adderall, Ritalin every day. But cocaine was more of a weekend drug. GHB, more of a weekend drug. So not just a managing drug addict, but I was extremely well managed drug addict.
Mm.
I scheduled my drugs.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, steroid at the time I was taking steroids. I was huge, and those were like I don't know. I think those were every day. I can't remember to be honest with you. But
Yeah.
we would like shoot each other. My roommate in college, he got shot with a 357 Magnum, and it
Wow.
blew his tricep out over spring break. So by his ex girlfriend, believe it or not. So when he came back to college, he had all these pills, and I was his roommate. And so that's when I really started dabbling and trying all this different stuff because he had access to it.
Hi, and welcome to another episode on Unlocked from Within. Today's guest we have is Michael Dash. He's a best-selling author of Chasing the High, founder of F.A.T.E, from Addict to Entrepreneur series, mentor, and speaker. For the majority of his life, he has chased success, which to him meant money. It led him to various addictions, including work, gambling, cocaine, marijuana, and Adderall, just to name a few. He worked harder and longer than anyone he knew and built a $5.5 million a year company. Eventually, he started resenting the very business he built. He was not fulfilled and business started slipping. So after 11 years, he made a change and sold out, not knowing where his next paycheck would come from. He realized true fulfillment for him, it was helping others make significant and positive changes in their lives. So let's welcome Michael Dash to Unlocked from Within. Hey, Michael, welcome to another episode on Unlocked from Within. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me, Morty. I am stupendous. How are you?
Awesome. Great, feeling great. So I'd like to delve straight into it today. So let's start with your childhood and your upbringing and go from there.
Sure. I'm the son of an entrepreneur. I grew up on the East Coast in the U.S., New Jersey specifically, and followed my father as kind of a workaholic growing up. He really taught me you're the first one in and the last one out, and that's how you become successful in life. And I don't necessarily believe that to be true these days, but back in those days, that was just it. There were no computers yet. Yeah, he had me working since I was like 8 years old. He had a retail business and an import-export business around fine china and collectibles. So I was always in the store, in the warehouse, working with the guys. And at an early age, he would obviously pay me to come in and work 8, 9, 10. I'd always have a little bit of cash on me. And then I started becoming friends with the warehouse guys. And that's when I started gambling at 10 years old. So the warehouse guys who worked for my dad would take my bets for football games on the weekends. And that started at like 10, 11, 12. So I started gambling when I was 10, like consistently. And then they would bring me to the racetrack because there was a Meadowlands racetrack, which was a shot right down Route 17 from where my dad's store was in Paramus, New Jersey. It was a 40-minute drive. And after work on Saturdays, I would tell my dad, the guys will take me home, but they would really take me to the racetrack and we would watch the horse races and bet on the horses. This is 10, 11, 12, 13. And that started a 20-year gambling addiction for me.
Wow. Wow. And like from 10 years old, that's when it began.
10 years old was when
Yeah.
I made my first bets originally at 10 at Thanksgiving with my uncle. And then I got hooked. And then I started talking to the warehouse guys about it. And then it was just off to the races.
And was it more like you had a lot of wins on the board and, the fun of it back then being a kid?
Yeah, it wasn't about the wins.
Mm.
I was never really a big winner. It was the fun. It was the rush. It was the rush, the high of making the bet and having that high through 3 hours of a game. And I just couldn't get enough of it.
Wow. Wow. And then from there on, where did it, like within your teens, was it increasing on it? Were you doing it a lot
Yeah.
more?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was doing it every day. So then we would start gambling with my friends. Like after I worked for my dad, I got a job for a non-family member employer. I was a little bit older than the rest of the people in my class, so I got to work before them, right? Maybe, I don't know, 3, 4 months before them. I had a bank account before all they did. So we would be playing card games almost like 3, 4 times a week at each other's houses with whatever money we had. And I would bring my checkbook to the game. And I would like threaten to write checks and throw them in the pot and everything. And none of these guys even had a checking account yet. So I would just bet more than everybody and they couldn't stay in. But yeah, I was betting every single day on football, basketball, hockey, sport, whatever sport you could bet on. I was betting on
Wow.
until I was old enough to go to a casino. And then I started going to casinos. And then when I went to college, then I was betting with a bookie, and then I became the bookie. I figured, why make bets when I can take bets? So I was taking all these bets in, and that's when I became a bookie. And that's also when I started dabbling in drugs. Throughout high school, I was pretty clean. I was president of student council, played 3 sports, ran a lot of track, worked, did all the things you do in high school, stayed out of trouble for the most part. And when I went to college, I went to University of Maryland. It was a huge college, and I was just right into the party scene. And that's when I started dabbling with drugs. And then from my usage in drugs, I was always driven by money. I was always an entrepreneur. Then I started selling drugs. So I never knew my first foray into entrepreneurship would be as a drug dealer and a bookie, but that's what it was.
That's it. Yeah, right. That's mental. So at what age were you when you were a bookkeeper and you started dabbling with the drugs?
Yeah, they refer to it over here as a bookie.
Yeah.
I don't know if they refer to it there as a bookkeeper, but how old was I when I started dabbling? 17.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And were you also drinking?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but not heavily. I never was a big drinker. I mean, I would go out and get hammered,
Yeah.
but I would just do a bunch of shots because I didn't like the taste of, I liked being drunk. I liked being buzzed, but I didn't really like alcohol. Like, I didn't really like the taste of it, thankfully.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it never, like, I had a sensitive stomach, so it was more drugs for me. It was weed all the time, every day. Then it was cocaine on the weekends, and I got into that pretty heavily, and mushrooms and GHB. Those were like the Adderall. Well, it was Ritalin back then, but those were Oxycontin. Those were the different types of drugs I was participating in. I started in college, and I was dealing weed and coke in college, and a bookie. I had hair down to my neck. I had 3 earrings. I was doing steroids. It was crazy. It
Wow.
was as if, well, it wasn't as if, because I was totally disconnected from my soul and who I was as a person.
And so were you, yeah, what a cocktail. That's a massive cocktail. But like at that time, were you fully functioning in your day to day, going to work?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I was in college, so I mean, I was going to class. Well, sometimes,
Yeah.
but I would always study, take my own exams, and all that stuff. And I was working. I was doing home improvements, going door to door, selling home improvements, roofing, siding, decks, windows, in some of the worst areas in the country. This is in Baltimore and Washington D.C. And Baltimore was like the capital of the murder capital of the country at that time. So there was a lot of gangs and stuff. And, so it was interesting to be on the reverse side of the discrimination. And I really got to feel how it would feel to be a minority.
Yes.
Right. And really had a different view on things, from that experience. And understand what minorities have to go through in this country and in the world, but really in this country. But yeah, so it was all through. I was fully functioning. The number one thing that I was addicted to, besides all of those other things, was money. So it was money first, and then all that other stuff after.
Yeah.
So I always made sure that I got my money, and then I did my other stuff, and then I had my fun.
Yeah, right. And so, like, in one given day, like, how many things would you be taking at that point in time? Like, you're doing you got the gambling addiction and
gambling every day.
Yeah.
Every day was gambling. Yeah, because it would either be a poker game or there'd be sports on. There's sports every single day. So it was every day, and I was a bookie, so people were calling bets into me every day. Weed, marijuana every day. Adderall, Ritalin every day, but cocaine was more of a weekend drug. GHB more of a weekend drug. So I had different. I was not just a managing drug addict, but I was extremely well managed drug addict. I scheduled my drugs.
Yeah, right.
But like steroid at the time I was taking steroids. I was huge, and those were like, I don't know. I think those were every day. I can't remember, to be honest with you. But we would like shoot each other. My roommate in college, he got shot with a .357 Magnum, and it blew his tricep. Blew his tricep out over spring break. So by his ex-girlfriend, believe it or not. So when he came back to college, he had all these pills, and I was his roommate. And so that's when I really started dabbling and trying all this different stuff because he had access to it. And then he got me into, well, I made the decision, but got me into steroids. He had access to all this stuff.
Wow. And then from there, where did you end up going on after college?
So after university, as you would say, I went to New York. And I started working for a sports advertising company. I was selling advertisements in game day football, basketball, soccer, hockey publications around the country, 500 colleges. I was really good at that. I was always great at sales. And from my upbringing with my father, he taught me well. And so I was doing great with that. And then I got transferred into New York City to open up their second office. And when I was in New York, that's when everything kind of, went kind of pumped up, went tenfold, right? With my behaviors. But I was also doing really well financially and at the job. So, I was just in my 20s. I didn't know any better. And this is what the people around me were doing. This is what we did.
Yeah.
There was no mindset back there. We're talking over 20 years ago. I'm no spring chicken. So we're talking like 22 years ago. So they didn't have mindset, they didn't have breath work, they didn't have like meditation. I mean, I'm sure they had things,
but yeah,
like, tucked away in like nobody, it wasn't mainstream. Nobody knew about them.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't.
Yeah.
The only way I knew to work on myself was to go work out, go run or lift. That's all I knew.
Yeah, right. And like so while you were doing all this, the addictions with the cocaine and everything increased during this period?
Well, I stopped gambling because the gambling got out of control for me. I remember I would go to Las Vegas every year with my friends for the NCAA college college basketball. It's a big tournament in the US. And there would basically be like 10 games on at the same time. So I would be gambling, right, at a poker table, and I'd make sure I get a poker table where near the sports book so I could see all the screens. And I'd have like 10 different bets going on with the different basketball games while I'm betting blackjack. And I'm drinking, and I'm going to the bathroom bumping cocaine.
Yeah.
So I was completely like out of my mind. It really got out of control. And I remember one weekend there, I was on the verge of committing suicide. And that's when I said I need to stop gambling. Gambling for me was the worst out of all of those because I just thought about it 24/7 and I wanted to do it all the time. And so I walked into a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, and that's when everything changed with regards to gambling. I was still doing the rest of the stuff, but I had stopped gambling. Yeah, I've been clean like 17 years now.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
And so, like, you said, like, it was like with gambling, the addiction, the feeling, it was the rush. But what was it with the cocaine, the marijuana, the Adderall? Like, were they different feelings?
I mean, Adderall gives you a rush, cocaine gives you a rush, and marijuana gives you an escape. I mean, I think all of them are escapes, right?
Yeah.
When I look back on all of them, they're escapes. Maybe not Adderall. Well, I mean, Adderall like is kind of designed for people who have ADD and ADHD to help you focus, but it's really, if you don't know how to take it in small doses, it can take control of you, and then you don't realize how you're treating other people, because it raises your metabolism and you can get a lot done, but you're very short with people. And I was taking that a lot as I continued on in my life and opened up my business, and had my business for 12 years. I started really taking a lot of Adderall, and things became, I was just not a good boss. I was kind of, excuse the French, I was kind of a dick to my employees. And I wasn't doing it consciously. Like, I thought I was just communicating normally, but Adderall does that to you, where you're just like, get this done, get this done, get this done, get this done. And you don't realize how rude you're being to people, and how you're not being empathetic, but you're not actually being a leader. And I wasn't leading at all. And especially at the second half of running the business, because I got involved after I started my business with a business partner. We built the company up in 5 years to 5.5 million a year.
Wow.
We were in staffing and recruiting, focused in technology. And then she wanted to work less, and I wanted to keep building this thing and sell it. And we hit a crossroads, and we ended up in a legal battle, and that lasted 6 years. So I spent $1 million. At that point in my life, I had saved $1 million for all the work that I had done, despite gambling and spending it on drugs and everything. And I had that in my bank account, and slowly but surely the zeros kept dropping as this lawsuit kept going on and on and on. And yeah, I spent $1 million on a $350,000 lawsuit over 6 years. But it was more the time I lost than the money that hurt more than anything.
Was it the feeling, like, when it all came about, and that you knew you were proceeding with going to court? Like, did you think it was going to just be finished in a year or two? You weren't expecting it to draw out to past the 6 years?
I mean, I never thought it would be 6 years, but I never really thought how long it would be. I knew I was being wronged at the time. Like, I bought her out. I bought the company for 1.35 million and paid her $1 million up front, which I didn't have. I was leveraging it, right? I was borrowing it, I should say. And then I owed her 350K over the next 2 years. And then she violated the agreement and started a competing company against me. So that's when I stopped paying her, and then she sued me, and then I countersued her, and it went back and forth and back and forth. So it didn't start, I didn't start the lawsuit, but it doesn't matter. I fully engaged in it. I take full responsibility for all my actions in it. And that's just how it unfolded. But I also wasn't in a place where I was growing. I wasn't doing self-development. I wasn't personally growing. I was doing certain things that were positive, like I'd volunteer, and I was like Leukemia Lymphoma Society's Man of the Year nominee in Utah one year. I raised over 150,000 for them, but I really was doing a lot of that even from my ego, right? Even though I was helping others, which was great, it wasn't like pure, and until I started really working on myself. And that's when I stopped doing I gave the cocaine up, and there's a story around that, and I slowly gave the other stuff up as well.
And like the day to day living, with having that the court case over your head, like did it consume each day? Like did it mentally
Yes.
consume you? Like
Yes.
what were you feeling on a day to day while that was going on?
It was just a roller coaster of emotions, and it was also I was enhancing that, right, by taking these different substances. So I wake up in the morning and I have a huge coffee. So I already got the caffeine kicking in, right? Then I take an Adderall. Now I'm like all the way up here, right? And my staff is just getting into work, and I've already taken all that stuff, right? And I'm out there and I'm, having a morning meeting and then directing people, barking orders left and right. And then I'm, calling clients all day. And then all of a sudden I see an email from my lawyer. Oh, that changes my whole mood. I'm like, all right, and until I really got savvy at how to manage this, I would open it up and it would, like, I ended up in a battle with my own lawyers more than anything throughout this whole case because I felt they were taking me for a ride. But I would allow it to control my emotions, right? So then I would be in this emotional fluster. And then as the bills started racking up, I'd be putting pressure on my team to close more deals because I need to pay these bills. Then I would go home and then I would smoke weed and then I would come down. And then I would do the whole thing again the next day. And then when the weekends came, then I would drink with it because I had a bar for about 1.5 years. I had a bar, of course I did, in Salt Lake City, downtown. So then I would go to the bar and I would drink and then do those other things and, some other substances on the weekends. So it was just a roller coaster of getting myself up and then bringing myself down and putting my body through just this. I mean, I don't think it's a far statement to say I'm lucky to be alive.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You could have had a heart attack from just having the steroids.
Yeah.
Apart from everything else. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so from there, like, where did you, like, the court case, like, what was the, like, I heard, I think in your book, you say, like, you had a bit of a breakthrough. Is it you went to a workshop and it was around that time the court case was coming to an end?
I went to a retreat. Retreats changed my life. And I went to a retreat in Bali. Of course, when all else fails, go to Bali, they say, right? So I didn't even know what this retreat was about, but somebody had posted it in a Facebook group in one of my entrepreneur organizations. And I had an office in India. So every year I would go visit my staff in India and then wrap another destination around it. So I said, this is perfect. I go to India and then I go to Bali, right? So I went to Bali and I show up at this, this retreat, and there's two people talking about flow and living a life by following your intuitive guide. And that they were talking about how they were able to manifest the life of their dreams and how they had all these synchronicities in their life and blah, 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 blah. And I was sitting there and I was like, what the hell are they talking about? This is bullshit. Like, that's really what I thought.
Yeah.
I thought it was bullshit. Like, I'm from back east in the US, like I said, like there, we don't believe in synchronicity and manifestation. We believe, like, look, there's something called coincidence, right? Coincidences happen. It's not synchronicity. There's no such thing. Manifestation, no. If you work hard, good shit will happen to you. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So I didn't believe in any of those other things, right? And so I basically raised my hand. There were 30 people in this workshop, and I basically called them out and told them I thought they were full of shit. And I also told them how much pain I was in. It was the first time I really revealed the amount of pain I was in mentally. With all these substances, with this lawsuit. I was running a company that was running me. I had multiple substances that I was hooked on a daily basis, was chasing every single dollar that there was and totally disconnected from myself. And so I told them all that. After the session was done, I got a whole bunch of support from people. And they asked to talk to me, and I talked to them for about an hour after. And after speaking to them, I decided to take their course. And their course, it's a Flow Consciousness Institute online. And they have this like 8 or 10 week course on how to follow your intuition. And we did this whole process of clearing out our limiting beliefs through writing and journaling, and then through tapping and EMDR. And I didn't know what those things were, but like tapping, you tap different nerve endings around your body. And then EMDR is rapid eye movement. And so you're tapping and you're moving your eyes back and forth, and you're releasing your limiting beliefs. So a limiting belief might be like change is difficult, right? A lot of people believe that change is difficult, but change is actually one of the easiest things ever. You just tomorrow wake up and commit to doing whatever it is you want to do, just tomorrow. And then you do that the next day, and then the next day. You only have to do it once a day, every day. And then that will create change. But when you think about change, like, oh my God, I got to lose 15 pounds. That means I have to change my diet. That means I have to go to the gym. That's going to take me months of going to the gym. I can't stick to a new diet. Then you start getting in your head, and you just start going round and round and round. But when you break it down into small, concrete commitments, then they're really easy to do. And then all of a sudden, you've created change by just committing to the small commitment. You've created change. So I did that course, and that course really shifted things for me, because it was the first time I said, I will not prejudge anything they tell me to do. I'll just do it. Even if I don't believe it, I'll do it, and let's see what happens. And that's what I did. And it didn't like immediately all change. It slowly I started to slowly change as I was doing this course. And then it had an effect over the next like year. And then at some point, I like just did not care anymore about the lawsuit, and I just wanted it over. So I went to trial. I was on the stand 5 times, and it was crazy. And the judge ruled, and my ex-business partner threatened to appeal it. Right? It was like kind of a mixed ruling. But she wasn't happy. She thought she should have won everything. So her threatening to appeal it would have taken it another year and a half. And I would have done anything to end it, because I wanted to sell my company and get out of Utah. And so I settled with her for the same $350K that I initially owed her 6 years prior, just $1 million later, because that's how my life worked. And I settled for $350. I sold my company, I paid her off, and then I sold my houses. I sold everything so I could pay all my debt off, lawyers, everything. And then I left Utah and moved to California.
Wow. And
started over.
So do you think like the gift of the court case, that court case led you to those retreats and workshops, going down that path that you never knew before? Yes.
Did the lawsuit land me on to the retreats? I don't know exactly. I don't think that was the exact reason. I was just a stressed out entrepreneur with the lawsuit also, but I had a lot of other things. I had a lot of addiction, a lot of substances. I was just not happy. So I went to the retreat. And then I just kept going back, and I just been to like 15, 20 retreats, and then started running my own retreats, because I saw how many entrepreneurs are just so fixated and focused on growing their businesses, and everything else takes a back seat, including their own physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health. And that's what lend me into this type of work. After I wrote my book, and then did my kind of book tour, people started telling me, this is really helpful and everything. And so we opened this activated.life, me and a partner of mine, a buddy of mine, And it was focused on mental health in the entrepreneur space, and that's what it started as. And then I started running retreats from that.
Yeah, I love it. Like one of the things that stood out in your book, Chasing the High, for me was the bit that I resonated a lot with was the part where you're saying if you're an entrepreneur or own your own business, it's hard to talk to people because they either, if they're not an entrepreneur or own their own business, you don't really want to open up to them, which I imagine is the same with someone battling with addiction.
Totally, totally. If you don't feel somebody's can relate to you, then it's going to be really hard to open up to them. And a lot of times, like, we're doing these things in hiding. We're hiding our addiction. We're hiding our gambling. We're hiding what's happening in our head when we're an entrepreneur around the people that are closest to us who might not be entrepreneurs, right? Who don't have these addictions, who don't have these thoughts. But what I've realized is that, especially nowadays, everybody has some sort of trauma. Whether they want to face it or not is up to them. Like, there's a lot of people who are still in that world, in what I call the matrix, right? That I lived for the majority of my life. And they don't know there's any other way to live. So they believe that they're happy living the life they have, but they don't know there's something outside of the confines of the life that they've constructed. Because what they've constructed is all they know. And that was me.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a lot of us. So they don't think there's anything wrong with them. But if you go and ask them if they're truly happy, then a lot of them tend to tell you they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like like my path's quite similar to your path, which is what, like, reading your book, it resonates a lot for me. Is I had my first business when I was 8 years old, selling lollies, and then it'd go into high school selling other things like soccer jerseys and making mix CDs and whatever. And then going into, when I was in my like 17, 18, I'd be buying and selling used cars and whatnot to buy my first house when I was 20. And all these things is, like you said, the under it all is it's chasing money. But the feeling that it is a lonely path. Because when you do open up to some people that aren't a business owner or an entrepreneur, they sort of feel like they don't know what to do with the information if you're unloading on them. So I feel like, I don't know, I'm asking as a question to yourself, is do you think if you do talk to someone that's friends or family, is the best way to start with in a conversation is, I don't want you to fix my problem, I just want you to hear me?
That's a great way to start it, sure. But very few people have the courage to do that. I think it's everyone's job to be more aware of how the closest people to them are acting, and even without analyzing how they're acting, it's our duty to ask questions about how they're doing and authentically communicate. So here's inauthentic communication. Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. How are you? Oh, I'm good too. How's work? Work's great. How's work for you? It's a little slow this time. I got to grind it out a little bit harder. How's the family? Family's good. Took the kids to baseball practice, took the blah, 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 whatever. Like, that conversation bullshit.
Yeah.
Because good is not a feeling.
When
somebody says I'm good, what does that mean? It's not a feeling, right? I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm fearful, I'm whatever, right? I'm anxious, whatever it is, those are feelings. So I think the way we communicate needs to shift. I've worked on that a lot. Actually, a coach of mine and a friend of mine, he gives this authentic communication class. And he actually, I had him teach in my retreat. And he's coming back to my next retreat because he's so powerful. And, there's, he puts a set of like 12 feelings down. These are really the feelings. And when we communicate how we actually feel, then it leads to deeper conversations, because all this fluffy stuff, it's not, in my opinion, authentic, and it doesn't really connect you with a person. You're going to forget that lunch you had with that person. That's valuable time of yours. So I think it's important that we as family members, as friends, that we're really having authentic conversations with the people that we love and spend time with, because otherwise, what's the point? What's the point? How are you going to know what pain your friend or family member might be in if you're not truly asking them? And then when they say they're good, following up by, well, what does that mean? What does good mean?
But
right?
what about like if the person with the pain doesn't want to come across to talk, like in their head, they're thinking, oh, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to come across as being negative. I don't want to come across as complaining. I sound like I'm always complaining. Like if they've got that going on, so they don't want to communicate, like what do you think's a good way to circumnavigate around that if someone's going through and feeling those thoughts?
Well, I think our words are really important. So feeling those thoughts, like you just said, feeling those thoughts, I think maybe thinking those thoughts, but I don't think they're feeling those thoughts, because I think they're feeling pain and fear.
Yeah.
That's what they're fearing.
Judgment.
That's what they're feeling. They're feeling fear of being judged, right? So I would just bounce back to them, is this how you want to continue to live your life? And that's your ego talking. Release your ego, get the help you need so you can improve your life and be a better friend and family member to that person there, but so you can treat yourself better, because you're out of integrity with yourself. If you're going to lie to other people about how you're really doing, then you're lying to yourself. And it's an avoidance thing. So, I used to do that all the time because I never worked on myself. I didn't do any of the hard self-development work, look at my shadows. Like, you need to be willing to work on yourself. And the first way to do that is ask for help. If you have some sort of addiction and you're not comfortable talking to your family or anything, go to a meeting, make a phone call. You don't have to physically show up. You can take your computer and find a Gamblers Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous meeting anywhere in the world. You can find men's groups all over the place, women's circles everywhere. Reach out to me. I can refer you to many, many amazing organizations and amazing groups. I go to a men's group every week. I continue to do work on myself. I go to various self-development, self-improvement workshops. I not only run retreats, but I go to retreats, because I learn every time I learn when I run them, and I learn when I go to them.
100%.
And that's what it's about. So, it's get out of your head, get out of your ego. You're not that important, but you owe it to yourself. You're not that important to be judged by somebody else and for you to care what that judgment is. You're not that important. Like, nobody is. I'm sorry to say it. Nobody really cares. Only like the closest 5 people in your life truly, truly would do anything for you, or less. If you have 5, it's amazing. Most of us have less. All the other people, the social media, all the friends on social media, all the people you grew up with, all that stuff, when it really, really, really comes down to it, they're not like, sorry to say it, like maybe one of them or something, but like it's your closest 5 people, right? All these other people who are giving you likes on social media, who are telling you great job doing this, great job doing that, they truly, truly, in the big scheme of things, like they have their own lives. We all do, right? So it's your responsibility to talk to that person you're close to, one of those 5 people, and tell them the pain you're in, or ask them how they can support you better, or how they can support you at all.
Love it.
So that's my belief. That's my belief. Anything I say here doesn't mean it's true, just my experience, right? Everybody has their own experience.
And you say in your book, like, you had a bit of a run-in with your brother. that was around the time of giving up the gambling? You're in the car with him.
Oh yeah, so that was early on in the book. That's like the first scene, I think, in the book. Yeah. So my brother and I were driving up to Massachusetts. We had from New Jersey. It's about a 3.5 hour drive, something like that. And that's where we would have Thanksgiving every year in the US. And on the way up, I was gambling. Now this is when we were 17, 18 years old. No, older than that, in our 20s, sorry. And I was putting sports radio on because I would listen to all the updates of all the sporting events so I couldn't have the latest information before I made my bets. And my brother turned the radio off. He wouldn't let me listen to it. I said, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I can't listen to sports radio. I'm going to Gamblers Anonymous." And I said, "Are you serious? What's wrong with you? You're a degenerate going to Gamblers Anonymous. It's a bunch of losers, right?" And that was before I went, obviously. And so I ridiculed him. We left it off. And as the next month or two went on, I started seeing him changing. And my gambling was getting worse. And now we're talking my 20th year gambling at this point, 30 actually. And that's when I said, "You know what? I don't know what this Gamblers Anonymous did to my brother, but I want to check it out." That's really what I thought. I said, "I don't know what they did to him, but I want my brother back." And I went in to just check it out and see what it was about. And I realized once I walked through those doors, I mean, at first I looked around and there was like all these blue collar people, a fireman, a policeman, a mailman, a bus driver. I would walk in my pinstripe suit from New York City, like an asshole. And I looked around and I said, "What am I doing here? Like, these people aren't even successful. I'm way more successful than these people." My ego out of control, judging everyone. And when everybody shared around the room about what they were going through, I realized I had more in common with all those people than my closest friends. And I might not have entered that room if it wasn't for that drive with my brother up to Massachusetts and him not letting me listen to that sports radio. I might have never answered that room. But once I got there, I realized that, I was in the right place. And I just dated myself because I've been 17 years clean. So that makes me 47. So yeah, 30 years old. That's when that happened. And it was a pivotal point in my life for sure.
That's awesome. And what did you find were the ways to give up your other addictions, like your cocaine addictions, marijuana?
So cocaine, I was it's actually a funny story, but I was in New York City. I left New York City. I went to Utah. I built a company, opened offices in India, and then opened another office in New York City. So then I was going back to New York City and Salt Lake. And when I was in New York, I was out with some friends one night and we were doing coke. And my friend got in a fight with these two guys, and I was across the bar and I came over to break it up. And I literally got punched in the face breaking it up, and my nose was sideways. And I had to go get my nose fixed. And once my nose was fixed, the plastic surgeon came out and he handed me the bill. And I looked at the bill and it was $10,000 and no insurance didn't cover it. And I said, "Holy shit." And I looked at the plastic surgeon, the doctor, and I said, "I'm going to make you a promise right now and myself. I will never put anything up this $10,000 nose again." And I quit cold turkey. I never did coke again.
Yeah, right. Wow.
I already had the premise of the anonymous program under my belt. So it was pretty easy, actually, the cocaine, even though I had done it 10 years. I was addicted 10 years every weekend. I knew it wasn't serving me anymore. I just got my face destroyed. I didn't want anything to do with it. So that was easy to give up. The other ones were a bit harder. The Adderall was very, very tough. It just came to a point where I ran out of Adderall in the office, and I couldn't get to my doctor, and my employees started telling me, there was 3 or 4 days I had no Adderall, And they started asking me like, hey, what happened to you? Like, you're so much calmer. You're like so much more enjoyable. Like, you're working through these issues. We're working together. Like, is everything cool? And I was like, oh my God, like I had no idea. But it was that wake up call that really got me to like, all right, I'm not going back to I'm not getting any more. I'm done. And so I stopped. Um, and I wish I had stopped earlier, but it was the last year I had the business. It was like 5 years ago. And that's kind of when I stopped taking Adderall on a daily basis because I was taking 30 milligrams a day. Yeah. And then there was GHB too. That's a whole nother story. Don't even want yeah. But I stopped doing that. That was a very, very challenging drug to stop and to start and the whole thing. Because I was addicted to it. My body was addicted to it. And I was actually using it with all my lovers and all my partners. And they were using it. A lot of them were using it too. So I had gotten hooked on it on like for 6 years. My friends would make this stuff. And for 6 years, I got hooked on it. And then I started connecting my mind and my body to this substance and started always taking it. And so I eventually admitted to 100 entrepreneurs at another retreat that I was addicted to GHB and that it was destroying my life. And I was crying in front of these people, actually. And it's very rare to see me cry. And it was a very emotional time. And I really got a lot of support. And I quit it then, 7 years ago now. So yeah.
It's amazing. And did your body take a bit of time to detox, or like did you have any issues detoxing or?
Not really. I mean, I had fatigue and I had challenges sleeping, especially when I stopped. Now, every now and again, I'll partake in some marijuana. But when I stopped marijuana, sleeping became difficult because I was used to marijuana. I only smoked at night to come down from my day. But my body was used to just falling asleep on it. So when you cut that out, then it becomes very challenging to sleep. So I've had issues sleeping. That's the main thing. Yeah.
And then did you find, you talk about you started running more, you started enjoying doing marathons. Like, did you find that there was a bit of a transfer of the addiction to that outlet?
Well, I was still doing marathons. And I had stopped gambling, and that's when I started running a lot more because I had time. Gambling took up so much time. The other drugs, I mean, they take up time, but not like gambling. Because I'm researching, I'm like doing like all this work every single day, right? So when that was gone, then I had all this time, and I'm like, well, what do I do with my life now, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I started running the marathons. So I was still doing Adderall, and I was still smoking weed when I was running these marathons. In fact, in the New York City Marathon at mile 17, I took an Adderall at mile 17, and it was the stupidest thing I could have ever done because my heart felt like it was going to explode. And it almost did. Yeah, I'll never forget that. But yeah, running was a huge outlet for me, for sure. But I was actually still running all those marathons. I imagine how good I could have done if I wasn't smoking weed and taking Adderall.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, we'll see if I can. I'm doing this big race. I was telling you earlier before we started broadcasting. I'm doing this big race, 29:29 Everesting. So we'll see how it goes without any of these substances.
That's awesome. And what are you finding with, you're going to these sessions with these other people that have got these addictions, like, are you still in contact with them? Like, you're still in those support groups? Like, for I guess a person of the audience that has an addiction that's looking at taking those first initial steps, just so he or she doesn't think it's a one thing. Like it really is something for life, isn't it? It's like going to the gym. You got to keep working at it.
Yeah, yes, yes. You can shift the type of work you do, but you got to keep working on yourself and on your addiction, right? And be aware of the people, places, and things. The people you surround yourself with, the places you go to, and the things that you do are going to determine the influences in your life. So I spent 10 years in the Gamblers Anonymous program regularly. I don't go anymore. I live in Mexico. I live in Tulum, Mexico. So maybe there's meetings here, but they're probably in Spanish. But I don't feel the need to go, and I haven't gone in several years because I have zero interest in gambling ever again. I'll never gamble again. But if I put myself in the right set of circumstances under the wrong conditions, then I might not trust myself. Meaning, going to Las Vegas and being in a casino, I can go to Las Vegas and go into a casino, but I cannot stand there and watch my friends play poker or blackjack. No, because then I'll start no. So I won't put myself in those situations ever. But I've taken many courses and done a lot of work on myself. I continue to. It never ends. You have to always work on yourself. And so I would say for the person, who's starting out, go to a meeting. I also coach people through these addictions. You can check out my website, michaelgdash.com. And I'm glad to have a consultation with you and see how I can support you. There are a lot of people out there to support, and the anonymous programs are really amazing. And, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And, I think I kind of lay it out in my book a little bit. It's not like a self-help book, but it's really my story about overcoming entrepreneur mindset, but also the addictive mindset, and being in all those lawsuits and all the craziness that was happening.
Awesome. And what was the underneath, the breakthrough of understanding that the addiction at its core was money? Like, what was the breakthrough with that?
Well, after the lawsuit, things shifted for me. I mean, I was around a lot of money and had a good chunk of money when I had my business and stuff. And now I just spent. I don't want to say lost. I willingly did it. So I spent $1 million, everything I had basically. And so now I sold everything I had to get out of this lawsuit. And now I'm had a little bit left, right? To start fresh again. It's been a journey. It's been a different mindset, but I made a promise to myself that I would never do something where money was the primary reason for doing it. Money's got to be there, obviously, but the primary reason can't be money. Before, the primary reason was always money. How much money can I make doing this? That's why I sold drugs. How much money can I make gambling? Well, that's why I became a bookie. That's not why I gambled, because I lost and I saw a lot of people losing. So I said, let me be a bookie because I'll win, right? My business was all about how much money I can make. The staffing and recruiting. I didn't love doing it, but I was good at it, great at it. So all those things were money driven. And now my work is not money driven. Now the trick is finding the happy medium. And it's always a roller coaster, I started a dress business. And so that's in the infancy stages. I know, I look like a designer, but it wasn't me. I'm not the designer. My business partner, she's the designer, and I'm funding and providing some strategic direction. But that's a slow, it's a startup, so it's slow, right? So, and I'm running retreats now. And if you know retreats, if you know the retreat business, you don't make a lot of money running retreats. But the fulfillment I get from running them is beyond money, because this is how you transfer, you help people change their lives. You provide them different tools that they can take back to their communities and to themselves and integrate in their lives, so they're living at a higher vibration and living at a higher place, and they're healthier, because right now it's all about our mental health. All the other things we do are focused on our mental health, whether it's physical, spiritual, emotional, it's all mental. It all focuses on driving mental. So people don't like to talk about mental health, but that's a reality of the world. There's so much noise, there's so much distraction. So it's really important to be grounded and have these different modalities that you can turn to, that you can start your day off, or you can end your day, or in the middle of your day, whether it's breathing, whether it's ice baths, whether it's running, whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation, whether it's dancing, whether it's singing, all these things. The only thing I used to do is run. My last name's Dash. I was forced into running. I had to run. But all these other modalities I've kind of learned, like the other big one for me is a sound journey, sound healing. This is one of my favorite things ever. It really calms your anxiety, it calms your nerves down, and you can just release all your tension just by laying there and hearing all Tibetan bowls and various other instruments. I highly recommend. Google it in your town, in your city, wherever you live, you'll find them. I've been to like 120 of these things, and they changed my life. So all these different modalities I put into a 5-day or 6-day retreat, along with different workshops where we talk about our relationship with money, right? And how we treat money, and how it affects our family life, our sex life, our partner's life, our kids' life, our employees' life. Are we playing from a place of lack or a place of abundance, right? Like when I had my business, I used to tell everybody we weren't doing that great, so they wouldn't ask me for raises. Like, and so many people running their company told me they do the same thing. But now with the tools I have, like that's not how I want to run my business. I want to run the business like, if we're doing good, then you're doing good, right? And share it with everybody, because that's why they're going to work harder and be loyal to you. So those are some of the things that I learned along the way. I wish I knew that back then, but I know it now.
And what's like your day-to-day look like now with what you've learned, the more peace you've got now? Like what do you find helps you just starting your day, not on a day of like, you see, you don't wake up, look at an email that might be not so great news. Like how does your day look at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on my relationship with my phone, probably just like everybody. This is also a new session that we're going to integrate our relationships with our phones, putting some ground rules around our phones. So sometimes I do check my phone, but I don't check my email. It's usually social media, which is not, I don't suggest it. But right after, and I'm working on it. Next thing I do though is I go down and I stretch every morning for a half an hour. I had a couple back surgeries, so stretching is really important. It's like my type of like yoga stretching, very quiet. I'll journal, and right now I'm doing visualization, because I'm doing this big race that I talked about, climbing this mountain, 29029 Everesting. And I'm visualizing me on top of the mountain 17 times, because that's how many times I have to do it. So I'm visualizing this, and then I'm journaling, and I'm visualizing my retreat selling out, which is December 8th through 12th in Tulum. So I'm visualizing these things because that's what I'm working on right now. And this is a new practice, and I'm journaling, and then I'm doing some reading. And I do breath work throughout the day. Sometimes later. And I'm having my coffee while I'm doing this. Got to have the coffee. So I stretch and then have the coffee and then do that. And then I take my dog out. And then I go for a workout. And I try to do that with the first 2 hours in my morning. And things shift. Sometimes it's not reading every day or journaling every day. Sometimes it'll be, yoga, breath work, or I'll go to do an ice bath. I usually do those at night though, once or twice a week. I love ice baths.
Are you finding the ice baths are helping with you to sleep better?
I haven't made that connection.
Okay.
But they definitely help me meditate. It's kind of a meditative practice. So I might do some meditation in the morning, or yeah, the ice baths, I love the meditating and the ice baths, and do a bunch of Joe Dispenza stuff as well. But not consistent, but sporadic. You don't have to be like super, you don't have to do the same exact thing every day. Like people think in their mind, oh, morning routine, I have to do A, B, C, D, E. No, you can have a couple different modalities that you switch in and out. And I think that's actually healthy because it keeps things,
Keeps it fresh. Yeah.
Fresh. Yeah. Yeah. And also there's a bunch of habits. I have this habit tracker that I check off these habits I've committed to, and it's right on my phone. I can pop it open, and as I'm doing them, I just check them off. And so then it can run stats on what habits I've kept and what I haven't, and then I can kind of look at it every quarter.
Cool.
So it's this new application that I put out for all my team, for everybody who comes to my retreats, basically. And it takes you through visioning. So we talk about your values. I have an expert I bring in who talks about values and habits. And then we take those values and integrate it into your vision and mission in your personal life, in your family life, and in your professional life. And so we break those things down, and your vision is where you want to be, and your mission is how you're going to get there. And so we integrate the values into those, because these are personal values, not your company values. Everybody does their company values. Most people don't do their personal values. And then we integrate that into the habit tracker. So the habit tracker feeds your mission, which feeds your vision, which feeds your values. And then we have everybody write out their not obituary, but eulogy. Excuse me. We have them write out their eulogy to make sure everything that they're focused on, like that's what they want to accomplish when they're by the end of their life, whether it's family, whether it's health, whether it's professional. We have them write that out, super powerful, and then all of them tie together. And then they can take that and use it post-integration from the retreat.
Awesome. Awesome. And so who else, with the retreats you've been doing, who else are you seeing a bit of a trend of who it's best suited for? Obviously, entrepreneurs. Who else do you think?
Really, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, community leaders, social media leaders, sales leaders, high-level executives. Yeah, I mean, anybody who is serving others and underserving themselves, right? So if you're in sales, for instance, you're consistently having to hit numbers and having to serve these slated numbers, right? So always going, little time for yourself, right? Company leader, or if you have community leaders, again, you're in charge of a lot of people. You're giving a lot of your energy out to a lot of different people. So anybody who's kind of in those situations, and then solopreneurs who are completely on their own, it's really challenging to be a solopreneur. So all of those people really fit this well. But I also think this program that I'm running can be taken to corporate, and eventually I plan to do that.
Awesome. And if someone's listening to this, they might be a partner of someone that's battling an addiction. What advice would you have for them?
It's super tricky. Now, when you say partner, are you talking business partner or life partner?
Could be a business partner, could be a life partner, family.
There's different dynamics involved in these things, right? A life partner is somebody who I believe should show empathy. If they know that their partner is going through this, they should lead with empathy. Most likely their partner's done something to hurt them through this addiction. And turning that anger that they have into empathy for that person is key. And showing support and asking how they can support is the best way to do that, versus telling and dictating somebody that they need to go get support. Because if you're an addict and somebody tells you you have to do something, your first reaction is resistance. is who are you to tell me I have a problem? And yeah, so I strongly suggest, in my experience, that you lead with empathy. You ask how you can support, and you have to be gentle about it and make sure that they're in a place to receive. And if you're a business partner, same thing. And you know, you can easily open a conversation by saying, are you open to receiving some feedback or input from me on just some things that I've noticed and I've experienced with you that you may be unaware of? Are you open for that? It might be a deep conversation, but are you open for that? If you're not, it's fine. But if you are, I'd like to share some things. Because as soon as they say yes, they've invited you into the conversation, and their defense mechanisms are going to go down. So that's super important. So that's how I suggest. And also asking them questions. Like, is this behavior, after you've done that and they've said yes, is this type of behavior like serving you? Is this how you want to show up in the world for yourself? You know, how do you feel after a night of this? Are you know, do you want the kids to see you this way? Do you want the employees to see you hungover every morning, or yelling at people, or just disconnected from relationships, whatever it might be? These are some of the questions that you could ask.
Powerful, very powerful. And just one last one. If a person has addiction and he hasn't reached out yet, he may be feeling suicidal, depression, burnt out, you know, dealing with challenges and the adversity and that pain of the just living day by day. What would you say to that person to help him live another day, change his state, to go seek help?
I would say, I feel you. I feel you here in my heart. I've been through the pain. I've been through the confusion of who you are. I've run from myself for the majority of my life. Sometimes I didn't even know I was doing it. And to pick up a phone and attend a meeting, it's an anonymous meeting for a reason. They don't care who you are. You don't have to say, you don't say your full name. You can just go in there and sit. You don't have to say anything. And you can go online and keep your video off. Just go and listen to what they have to say. On the other side of fear is growth. So if you're afraid of being judged by a bunch of strangers, just know on the other side of that, you're going to learn something about yourself and grow from it. And life is much, much better without the substances than it is with the substances when you're addicted to them. You know, everybody goes through things up and down. You have a choice of how you want to handle those. And you are worth it. You are worth it. Life is beautiful. Go to a meeting, don't say a word, just listen, and then just come back the next time. And then you decide when you want to talk.
Awesome, Michael. Thank you for being on Unlocked from Within and taking the time today to share the value that you've delivered. It's been awesome. I hope we can do this again.
Absolutely. And go get my book, Chasing the High, Amazon and Audible. This is a great story about how to change your perspective and change your life. If I can do it, anyone can.
Where else can the audience reach out to you?
They can find me, like I said, my book, it's on Amazon or Audible, Michael G. Dash, Chasing the High. I'm on all social media platforms, at MDASH1 on Instagram. And my website's Michael G. DASH, michaelg-dash.com. And so you can find me on any of those outlets. Feel free to reach out. You know, I'm here to support.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks again, Michael. Hopefully we get to do it again.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening or watching another episode of Unlocked from Within. Please like and share the podcast with anyone you think it would help, and please leave a review and subscribe. You can check out Michael Dash on Instagram at M-1, Facebook at Michael Dash, LinkedIn, Michael Dash, and his website, michaelg-dash.com. If you'd love to read his best-selling book, Chasing the High, you can get that on amazon.com as well. Thanks again for listening to Unlocked from Within. Cheers.